Well, NBA free agency is officially underway. Last night, the Trailblazers and center DeAndre Ayton agreed to a buyout for the final year remaining on his contract. According to reports, Ayton will give back $10 million, meaning Portland will pay Ayton $25 million, and the other 10 will come off the salary cap. Shams reported that Ayton and his team approached the Blazers for the buyout. Jason Quick is reporting that Ayton was often a headache for the team with tardiness and attitude issues. More details on Ayton coming up on the Rip City Drive. Sean Heiken, our Trailblazers insider, will join me at 4:20. The Blazers also did not extend a qualifying offer to Jabari Walker, meaning he'll become an unrestricted free agent. Elsewhere, the Jazz and Jordan Clarkson are finishing a buyout from the NFL. According to ESPN, teams are mulling over trade offers for TJ Watt. And it's official. Texas State is officially a member of the Pac-12 ahead of the 2026 relaunch. The Pac-12 needed to reach 8 football playing schools, the minimum at the FBS level.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Kike hits one well to left center field. This one heading back toward the wall. It is over the wall and gone. A home run. Kike Hernandez hits his 8th home run, and the Dodgers jump on top 2-1. 2-2. And Will swings, hits the ball well to center field. It's heading back toward the wall. Still carrying. It is gone. A home run for Smith. Hit it out just over the center field wall on a 2-2 pitch. And the Dodgers lead it 3-1. Dreyer stretching. Now the payoff pitch home. Swung on and popped up. Foul, third base side. Max Muncy drifting by the coach's box. And he will make the catch, and that's the ball game. And the Dodgers win their 6th straight series. They go to 5-1 on the road trip. Overall, 53-32, the best record in Major League Baseball.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, NBA free agency launches right now. As of 2 minutes and 42 seconds ago, it's Shams time, so turn on the notifications, and we'll see what NBA teams are able to get done now that we have entered into this new league year. And I actually learned something last night that I was unaware of. I did not realize when a team and a player agree to a buyout that whatever they agree to, that the reduction, that amount comes off your salary cap. So I went from like, why would they buy Ayton out to all of a sudden realizing that? And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So that's the big news coming into the show today. The Trailblazers and center DeAndre Ayton have agreed to terms on a buyout. And now he's got 48 hours before he clears waivers and can become an unrestricted free agent and sign wherever he wants to go. I would say the Lakers would make a lot of sense. Whatever. But here's the good news for the Portland Trailblazers. It turns out that this is actually a good deal. So DeAndre Ayton was scheduled to make just over $35 million this year. According to Shams, Ayton and his team went to the Trailblazers and decided to request a buyout. They would like to do a buyout so that Ayton can become a free agent and be able to sign where he wants. After Ayton saw them in their last 2 drafts take in the first round of center Donovan Clingan and then Young Hansen, I think Ayton realized you can see the writing on the wall. He's not a part of the future. And now he'll have a chance to be able to sign with a team, any team he wants, any team that would want him. And more than likely, that will be a contender. But the Blazers now are continuing to make moves and really make a push to the youth. We've already seen them move Anthony Simons. They now have been able to get off of DeAndre Ayton, and now we wait for what I would think would be the top priority at this point, and that's finding a way to get a deal done where you can move out Jeremy Grant. So we're seeing some definition with what the Trailblazers are trying to do. Now, you may ask yourself, what's the significance of the buyout with DeAndre Ayton? Well, like I mentioned, Ayton agreed to give back $10 million. Now, rarely do you see that type of number given up in the buyout market. It's rare. But I think Ayton probably valued becoming a free agent a great deal. And from what I was told, it's quite possible that, if they don't already have a deal discussed and nearly in place with another team, his agent and his team obviously know what his value is on the open market. So he'll go and sign a 2 or 3 year deal, whatever the numbers are, for that value. So maybe Ayton can get like a 2-year, $30 million deal or a 2-year, $25 million deal. Whatever the numbers are, he'll go out and sign another deal. But the most important thing for the Trailblazers, and here's what it means to you as a basketball fan, the Trailblazers, with the addition of Drew Holiday, were becoming financially strapped, especially with the new CBA and the restrictions that are in place. By acquiring Holiday in the recent deal with Anthony Simons, the Blazers hard capped themselves at the first apron of the luxury tax. If Portland wants to use a mid-level exception to sign a veteran player this summer, that would put them way over the luxury tax threshold and bump them closer to their salary limit. So by reducing Ayton's obligation, they were able to mitigate that, either keeping themselves out of the tax penalty zone altogether or maintaining some flexibility when approaching that apron. So the good thing here is that you have more flexibility, more room for the young centers to play, Donovan Clingan and Young Hansen, and then, of course, chemistry improvements with Ayton out. And that's a good thing. Now, I mean, he gave back nearly 30% of that money. That's a huge number. But most importantly, it's going to give the Blazers access to the full mid-level exception so they can be active in the free agent market to be able to continue to add players that they think will fit the culture and what they're trying to accomplish. And if we know anything about anything now, we know what type of team they're trying to put together. Athletic, long, and finding guys who can play both ways, offense and defense. I mean, they're molding this team now into the image of Chauncey Billups in the way that he wants to play. So this turns out to be a good thing. My guess is, and I know some fans are upset because they gave away Ayton for nothing. Well, it's not nothing. They got, the cap savings, which is huge. But I think people are frustrated because they thought when you give up DeAndre Ayton that you would do so in a trade and be able to get something back in return, like a pick or a player. But, my guess is there wasn't much of a market for Ayton because he's a flawed, antiquated type center. And in that type of situation, the Blazers would have had to attach assets to unload DeAndre Ayton more than likely, or they would have had to have taken back salary to be able to get him to move on or to trade him. And that's not something they wanted to do. Now, in this situation, you save money, you add more flexibility, you have access to the full mid-level exception now, and you didn't have to attach any type of assets for Ayton to move on. Now, I asked someone that I trust whether or not Ayton, if they would stretch out the remainder of that $25 million, and I don't think that's going to happen. So they'll eat the $25 million this year, and then next season that money will come off the books. But the Blazers did save themselves $10 million. Now we got to sit back and wait and see what Joe Cronin is able to accomplish. My guess would be, or I can tell you what my number one priority is now for the team. That is to find a deal for Jeremy Grant and to move him out and hopefully bring back a couple of players who can contribute to this team. And by doing that, you move Grant out and you continue to go young, but most importantly, you clear a pathway for Denny Avdia and Tamani Kamara to play side by side in the starting lineup at the forward spots. Now, the good news is with Ayton out, we know who the starting center is going to be next year. It's going to be Donovan Clingan. Pretty amazing. And now maybe they'll be able to give some minutes. I don't know how much, but get Young Hansen involved. They still have Dwap Reef, who has some value as a backup. And then you've got Robert Williams III. But the problem is with Time Lord is that I think he's playing, 26 games as a Trailblazer. Injuries have just derailed him completely. But Donovan Clingan will be the starter. And then we're going to have that starting lineup of the young guys, Scoot, Shaden, Clingan, Denny, and Tamani. So that's where we're at as we kick off free agency. If you want to reach out to me, the telephone number here is 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. You can find me on social media at Chad and Rip City. You can watch and listen on YouTube at Rip City Radio 620. You can always stream the show and podcast on our free iHeartRadio app with Rip City Radio 620. And then coming up on the show today, for those who missed it, You're going to hear my conversation with Trailblazers Assistant General Manager Mike Schmitz coming up here in 10 minutes. We'll talk with Sean Hiken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, for the latest on free agency and the Trailblazers, and we'll focus in on the DeAndre Ayton buyout. That's coming up at 4:20. And then my good buddy Chris Burkhardt with more on NBA free agency coming up at 5:20. So that's the plan for the show today. But this is really when things get exciting. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, teams are going to be busy. Teams are going to be signing players. One name that I've seen reported and connected to Portland potentially is Luke Kennard. The Blazers obviously will need some scoring. They need shooting to add to the roster. Kennard is a guy who can hit the three ball with consistency, but we'll wait and see. My biggest priority, and I hope he's able to get it done, is to find a deal for Jeremy Grant. But that's where we're at. I think the buyout for Ayton was good because we didn't expect it to be 30% reduction in the $35 million that he was owed. And now all of a sudden, Portland's sitting there with more flexibility and access to that full mid-level exception. And I think teams around the league are still trying to get a feel for the new CBA, for that second apron, and how everything's going to work out financially. So we're getting a feel for that, and we'll see how things continue to shake out. Now, I do have other things I want to discuss today, but the majority of the show will be focused on free agency. And if anything breaks throughout the course of the afternoon, we'll update you right away with anything that's going on around the NBA. Other things I want to touch on, I definitely want to hit on the WNBA All-Star voting. There's a breakout or breakdown of the fan voting, the media voting, and the player voting. And you'll be, I don't think, surprised, but the difference between the fans, the media, and the players when it comes to Caitlin Clark is pretty obvious. It's pretty wild. Now, in other good news, the Pac-12 has added Texas State, who plays out of San Marcos, Texas. And the key with this is that puts them at the number that they needed to be at to be an FBS school. They needed 8 football-playing schools, and they now have that. So Texas State becomes the 8th football-playing school. They have a basketball-only school and in Gonzaga, but now they've got the number they need to reach FBS for this new relaunch that's going to come up in 2026. My guess is they're going to continue to look to add other teams. Brendan thinks that Memphis could be the next target if they're able to reach a buyout agreement, but that's going to put them in a good position. They've already got CBS on board for some of the games. I'm very anxious to see, what type of TV package they can put together. And what's really impressive with what they've been able to do is think about it. A year ago, almost to the day, these teams bolted the Pac-12, went to the Big Ten, and Oregon State and Washington State were sitting there with no conference. And it appeared to have no hope. And yet here they are. They've pieced it together. They're going to keep the Pac-12, and they've got a bunch of other schools to join in. So that's good news, and we'll see how things continue to shake out there. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive. Free agency is underway in the NBA. We'll keep you up to date throughout the afternoon. You're going to hear the story on how the Trailblazers discovered young Hansen in China coming up next. And then Sean Hiken will join me at 4:20 here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Tony and Boring has chimed in. He's listening right now in the hammock. It's time for me to pull out the hammock as well. My daughter loves the hammock, and it's been beautiful the last couple of days. Yesterday evening, sitting outside, I was like, yeah, longer days, beautiful sunshine, and the golf course was in mint condition this morning. It was freaking awesome.
I saw you were stoked about the soft rock at the golf course too, Chad. You must be feeling yourself.
I am. I played in a tournament up at Longview Country Club this past weekend with Dwight's wife, Nancy, and we had a great time. But when we got there, before the tournament kicked off, they had a shotgun start at 9 a.m. Someone was bumping the smooth yacht rock, some of my soft rock classics. So it was very enjoyable. I enjoyed it. And loving this weather right now. Okay, Sean Highkin going to join me at 4:20. We'll get the latest on free agency and the DeAndre Ayton buyout that has been agreed to. He decided to give back $10 million. The Blazers are going to pay him $25 million, and that $10 million he's given back will come off of their cap, which is huge. So that's good news for the Trailblazers. And then Chris Burkhart's going to join me in studio for the 5 o'clock hour. Now, I do want you to hear this because we did it on Friday, and it was a terrific conversation. Mike Schmitz, who is, I think, the best hire that Joe Cronin has made since he took over as assistant general manager. Mike Schmitz he's got an eye for talent, and he was a big part of the brain trust that was able to do some scouting over the last couple of years in China, and they discovered young Hansen. And I wanted the story behind that. And so the Trailblazers gave me access to Mike Schmitz. So I want you to hear this because he's smart. Like, if you ever wonder or if you're ever concerned, like, I think the Blazers are in good hands in that front office because they got a bunch of guys that know what they're doing. Mike Schmitz is not your normal, ordinary, average type of executive. He's been around basketball forever. He's a self-made man. He's one of the bright young executives in all of sports. And the first thing I asked him about was how he fell in love with the game of basketball, and here's what he had to say.
Probably a longer-winded answer than you have time for, but just been around it since I was a kid and played, and then followed my passion to the G League as a video coordinator, and did some things on the coaching side, and then really took that to scouting and more front office work on the media side with ESPN and Yahoo and Draft Express, and then eventually found my way here. So, it's been a fun journey, and, really, really happy to be here in Portland.
How did you develop that skill for scouting and then the ability to package that knowledge into scouting videos that you used to make?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of reps, a lot of watching games and breaking down film and really learning from people who, are much smarter than myself, being able to, travel to different gyms all over the world, whether it be Europe or Africa or Asia. And, when I was younger in the business, being able to pick the brains of, longstanding GMs and executives and, sit in on different war rooms and just get a sense for, how a lot of the brightest minds saw the game. And, that really allowed me to, then eventually put that to good use and all the things that I learned. And so I'm very blessed to, have spent a lot of time around a lot of really smart people. And, now with the Blazers, obviously having so many brilliant minds in our war room and our organization, it's been a lot of fun.
You mentioned the travel, North America, Europe, Africa, Australia. You've been everywhere around the globe now. What are some of the similarities and differences you've noticed in terms of basketball development around the world?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. I think each country, each continent, has kind of different stylistic, differences and similarities in terms of, just kind of the on-court product. You even see, differences in terms of players' demeanors based on, where they're from. The international game, obviously, for so long in Europe has been, very skill-based game. Shooting is a premium, basketball IQ is a premium, ball movement, people movement, all a premium. And so I think you've seen that trickle into the NBA game a little more. And then, really in different countries as well, like being able to see the development of basketball, on the continent in Africa and the development of basketball in Asia. It truly is a global game now. And I think there was a tweet today about, our team having 8 or 9 players from, outside the United States. And I think that's something we take great pride in, but also just you go where the players are, right? And I think that's kind of where we're at as a league right now, which is great.
We're talking with Mike Schmitz, Trailblazers Assistant General Manager here on the Rip City Drive. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, where when I was younger watching basketball, there weren't too many international players in the NBA, but that certainly has changed. And I love how the game's become global, Mike. And I'm wondering, how much of an impact do you think, was it the 92 Dream Team that really changed everything to where we started to see basketball become so popular across the world?
Yeah, I think that definitely plays a role. I think part of it is the stars now in the NBA, being so global and international, and then going to play for their national teams. So playing in the Olympics, playing in the World Cup and all these, qualifying events. So many of our best players take such great pride in that. And I think, when you have those tournaments, like people want to go see, the best stars in the game. And that's a great chance to see them, with their national team. So I think it's kind of comes both sides of the coin there in terms of the growth of the game feeding into the NBA, and then the success of those players, in the NBA, then being able to give back, in those national team tournaments. So definitely been really cool to see.
That's awesome. How have you enjoyed your role as assistant coach with the Ugandan national team?
Oh, it's been great. It's, one of the better parts of my job and my, my life in general. And, really thankful for the Blazers to allow me to continue, kind of pursuing that passion of mine. And we actually have the AfroBasket, this summer in Angola. We qualified in our last FIBA window.
Awesome.
A few months ago. So yeah, really exciting to be able to go participate in that, and, going to bring a squad with, a lot of talent and some younger talent, and some of our veterans. So I'll be out in Angola in August with one of our video coordinators, Ikena Smart, as well. He's coaching with Nigeria, and they qualified as well. So it would be great to be out there with Ike and just kind of continue that journey.
That's great. That transition for you to go from ESPN to working for a team in the Trailblazers, what was that like for you?
It's been great, just being able to kind of finally be able to focus on, putting all the scouting and talent evaluation that you do toward one specific team, right? I think previously my job was so much about, okay, who are all the best players in the world? What level can they play at? Where should they be projected in terms of, the NBA, and, what level can they play in college, and where could they eventually play internationally? And now to be able to kind of, put that to good use and really help, an organization and help, Joe Cronin and the rest of the group as best I can, has been great experience. Love the city of Portland, love the organization. And, previously I could never contribute to drafting a player or, helping trade for a player or, sign a free agent. And so to be able to kind of learn from Joe and the rest of the group and, be able to contribute to those things has been a great experience, and just really excited about what we continuing to build here.
Gosh, that's really cool. We're talking with Mike Schmitz, Portland Trailblazers Assistant General Manager. All right, take us back a couple of years. How did Young Hansen hit your radar initially? Yeah,
so it was June of 2023. One of our key international scouts, his name is Nico Mathieu, is based in France. He was at the FIBA Under-19 World Championships and saw a 7-foot, Chinese big man, and was really impressed with his passing, his feel for the game, his instincts. And so he let the rest of the scouting staff know, wrote a scouting report, and one of our personnel analysts who does an excellent job for us, Jake Fox, always, evaluating film, writing reports, looking at data. He was just diving deep into his film and saw a lot of really unique traits just in terms of, some of the passing, the IQ, the feel, the size. And it was coming against, some of the best players in his age group in the world. A lot of players who were, drafted in the top 5 of the last couple of drafts. And so I hadn't really heard of him. I'd never seen him play. And so that led us to kind of dive deeper. And, Sergio Oliva, one of our other assistant GMs who, does a great job, he was all over it. He was, really active and aggressive in terms of making sure that, we got over to China. I helped him kind of put a plan together along with the help of Pu Jeter, one of our player development coaches and assistant general managers for the Rip City Remix. He actually played in China for 8 years and, played for a team in the province that Hansen is from, the Shandong province. And, Duop Reith was actually his teammate in 2022. So it's like all these different pieces and factors coming together. And then, Sergi being, very proactive about us getting over to China and evaluating him. And we liked what we saw. We, considered what would something in the 2024 draft look like if he were to enter. He opted not to. We continued following him really closely. And, eventually we're able to get our hands on some unique data that Sergi and the research and development team, was able to track down. And that allowed us to get a better look at the impact he had in the CBA and, how impactful he was offensively, defensively, what type of pick and roll defender he was. And so all these inputs coming together and then getting him in front of Joe, in front of Chauncey, and the whole group really kind of unanimously being impressed, kind of led to us being able to go get him on draft night.
Yeah, you mentioned basketball IQ, and that's something that both Joe and Chauncey mentioned today at the press conference. I'm curious because I want a better understanding of that. Like, what are some of the specific things that you see when you're scouting young Hansen that, is it certain plays or like positioning? Like, what are some of those things that would explain basketball IQ?
Yeah, I think it's the passing for him. You see it in different ways, right? Like for different players. I mean, I'll use Donovan as an example. Like Donovan's pick and roll defense and rim protection for his age was incredible. Like you just didn't see those type of defensive instincts. His ability to pass offensively as well, ahead of most prospects his age, but the defensive instincts, the timing that Donovan showed, and then you sat down with him and watched film for 5 minutes and you could tell, okay, the way he processes the game, especially defensively, is really, really unique and rare. And I think for Hansen is the offensive side of the floor as a playmaker. His passing, his ability to handle at his size, not afraid to take risks. I mean, he'll handle in transition and, throw a lob like a point guard. Or there were times they used him as a pick and roll ball handler. So like just kind of unique different things that you don't traditionally see from, a 7-2 center. And that's really what stood out was, the passing, some of the defensive IQ stuff as well, but definitely offensively and his ability to make his teammates better.
You mentioned that he did not declare for the draft last year and decided to stay in China. So over that year, as you continue to scout, like what were some of the improvements that were maybe surprising or pleasing to you as you continue to watch him throughout last year?
I would say his body is the biggest progress he's made. When Sergio and I went over there, we spent about 8 days. We saw multiple games, and he was still carrying some extra baby fat, and wasn't nearly as nimble as he is now. When he got to the NBA Combine this year, I think he was just 7% body fat, just under 8% body fat. Our health and performance team, when we brought him in, was really, really impressed with just kind of his movement patterns and, his ability to kind of change speeds and change direction. And for a player his size, just was very unique. And so I think he's done a tremendous job, with his frame, with his body, with his agility, and then just continuing to get even better at the things, he was already great at as a young prospect. So definitely saw some impressive development, and then also just being able to see it along with the rest of the league at the combine, being able to see it in our building in a workout. You evaluate him at the FIBA youth level against players his age, or, in the CBA, the Chinese Basketball League, against players who've played in the NBA or were college stars. But to see him against, fellow draft prospects at a similar stage of development always gives you, a little more confidence in your evaluation. And I think just overall, really proud of the process that, our whole group put forth in terms of, the evaluation of Hansen.
Hey, Mike, how difficult is it to look at a tantalizing prospect like young Hansen and then being able to know how his game, especially when they play overseas, will translate to the NBA game?
Yeah, you don't fully ever know, right? I think if we all knew 100%, then, we would all be GMs in the NBA, right? And,
Yes.
and executives of the year. And they always say you want to take all these inputs, and scouting is inexact. It's an inexact science. That's the phrase that you hear. But I think you just want to be really solid in your process with all prospects. This one is maybe a little more unique just because it's not quite as easy to access, playing over in China. But I think that's the key to feeling firm about your evaluation is, being able to see them for multiple years in different settings. And I think that's an approach that's, helped with previous prospects in the past, like being able to see, Denny play at the, under 16 European championships, the under 18 European championships, the under 20 European championships, and then going to watch him with Maccabi Tel Aviv, and then going to watch him in the EuroLeague and the Israeli League, like getting all these different inputs and seeing them in different evaluation settings at different points of their life, I think allows you to build confidence in the scouting that you're doing. And then you add in, the analytics piece. Like I said, like our research and development team did an incredible job, gathering all of that data and really being able to evaluate and quantify his impact. And so once you put all those things together, sit down, spend time with him, meet him, do your intel calls, talk to his teammates, his coaches. You just want to put all those things together. And the more inputs that you have, I think the more confident you can feel about your evaluation.
Boy, I really appreciate that answer and the insight. Chauncey Billups said something today that I think you're probably, more than qualified to speak to. It was brought up, the concern about the language barrier. And Chauncey said that, basketball is like a universal language. Well, you've been all around the world, and so you've seen these type of challenges before. Would you agree with that assessment that basketball is a universal language? And what have you seen in terms of, players trying to learn a second language and that process of developing as a player when they're trying to overcome that?
Yeah, I love the way, Chauncey put that earlier. I think the moment you get out on the floor and are able to, play with freedom and cohesion, and the way he plays, he's very unselfish. He celebrates the success of others like a lot of our players do. And so I think once he gets, between the lines in a game setting, some of those concerns will probably dissipate a little bit. I think it's more about, you have film sessions, you have team meetings, you have preparation, all those things. And I think, continuing to improve his English is going to be paramount, for those type of settings. But I think once you get between the lines and, his ability to connect with people is something that's been really impressive. If you've seen, I don't know if you all have met him yet, but if you've seen some of the videos and things like that, like he's very outgoing. He has a big personality. He's smiley. He's plays with this joy, and I think his style of play will allow him to connect with his teammates and his coaches rather quickly. But I think from a preparation standpoint, from a feedback standpoint, so much of the NBA is you have a walkthrough and, you're going through scouting reports and how are we going to guard pick and roll and how are we going to guard this guy? And then the next day it's, all right, here's a sit down with your coach. We're going through film on, what you did well, what you need to improve. And so I think it's really for all those moments where, there's going to be a little bit of a learning area, but, I wouldn't put any limits on his ability to improve rapidly, just because that's something he's done, on the court every time we've seen him. So I do definitely agree with Chauncey about just the fact that once he's on the floor and it's this global game where the ball is moving and there's so many nonverbal communicating keys and all these things, like I think he'll be fine at that point, especially with the style that he plays. Yeah, it's great. Once he said that and hearing you explain it, it makes perfect sense to me. I've just got a couple more questions for you. Look, I'm not a part of your front office, but from the outside looking in, what I'm most excited about is it appears that you and Joe and the rest of your team have great synergy amongst the staff and the way you work together. Joe mentioned after the draft that the teamwork that was involved in being able to locate and draft a player like Hansen. You just talked about that, but can you speak to the synergy and the way that you guys are able to work together and how that's led to the successes you've had thus far? Yeah, it's been incredible. Just the cohesion of the group, front office wise, for sure. I mean, Joe, Sergio, who I mentioned, Andre Patterson, who's done an incredible job in so many different areas of the front office, from basketball to health and performance. Asia Jones, Sharice Sam, Jake Fox, Danny Connors. Like there's all these different contributors, Sean Kiley, Zach Williams. Like, we have an incredible group that I think is really connected and brings, various different skill sets to the table. And I think anytime you have that many smart people able to sit down in a room, Alexander Powell, our director of basketball innovation, BJ Domingo, our director of player personnel, there's so many bright minds that, can add value in different ways and have different perspective on things. And that's what's really exciting for us, is just to have so many people from different backgrounds that can contribute to, building this thing out. And then, working closely with Coach Billups and his staff, and having cohesion there too has been a joy, I think, for all of us. And I definitely think there should be a ton of optimism just about the team, moving forward, and the steps that we've taken and made. And, obviously draft night with Hansen is another exciting development as well. So there you go. That is the very sharp Mike Schmitz, the Trailblazers assistant general manager. Big fan of his, really sharp. And what a great hire that was by Joe Cronin. Like, big time money. There is one big deal that's gone down in the NBA, reported by Shams. And if you're in the NBA news right now, you need to have Shams notifications on so you can be made aware of everything that goes down. But there have been a lot of things that have gone down over the last, 15 minutes. The Memphis Grizzlies and Jaren Jackson Jr. are expected to agree on a 5-year, $240 million maximum negotiation and extension. 5 years, $240. That is some sick cash. Also, free agent forward Dorian Finney-Smith has agreed to a 4-year, $53 million deal with the Houston Rockets. And the Rockets are going to be good next year. Free agent center and forward Paul Reed has agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Pistons. The Memphis Grizzlies and guard Cam Spencer have agreed to a 2-year, $4.5 fully guaranteed contract. And there you have it. That's where we're at right now. I'll keep you up to date on everything. Sean Highkin is going to join us coming up at 4:20 for all the details on DeAndre Ayton and the buyout with the Trailblazers. Chris Burkhart joining me in Studio 5. You got the Rip City Drive.
All right, Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, is going to join me coming up at 4:20, and Chris Burkhardt going to be in studio at 5 as we keep you up to date on everything that's going on around the NBA. And it's exciting. You know, we kick off a brand new league year. Free agency is now underway, and obviously we're sitting around waiting to see what Joe Cronin and his crew are going to do. They've already had some movement. DeAndre Ayton has been bought out, and the Blazers saved $10 million. That move alone is going to give them access to the full mid-level exception. So you got to love that. And we saw Anthony Simons moved out. I think the next big priority is to find a deal for Jeremy Grant. And then the Blazers continue this youth movement, but most importantly, put themselves in a position to have the 5 best young guys on the floor together. So we'll see how things continue to shake out. Now, I did do something new for the very first time this weekend. I think it was on Saturday. I'd never done this before. So I have these spots, and they pop up on my body, I would say probably about every 8-9 months, maybe a year. It's called tinea versicolor. And I went to a dermatologist once, and they're basically some type of autoimmune thing. They don't hurt. They don't bother me, but they're red blotches, particularly all over my back. So it's really more of just a cosmetic thing. I don't want red spots all over my body. It looks like I've been beaten with a whip or something. I don't need that in my life. So there's this drug where I can get a prescription for, and you take 2 pills 1 week, 2 pills the next week, and then they go away. And then I wait around for them to pop back up probably 8 or 9 months down the road. Now, the problem is I don't have a primary care physician, only because I never go to the doctor. And the one lady I did pick out that I had a physical with a couple of years ago, she left. So I need to find another one. But the problem is that because I don't have a primary care who could probably get me an ongoing prescription for these little pills, I go to the urgent care clinic. But after I was done playing golf on day 1 of the tournament on Saturday, I did an online visit with the doctor. Never done it before. Again, I never go to the doctor. I'm not taking any pills or medications. I don't have any issues that I'm aware of, aside from the obvious mental ones that you guys hear every day. But it was pretty awesome. Like, I didn't think I would like it, but I got to tell you what, the Zoom call to meet the doctor is the new way to go. I'm going to try and do that every single time I need the doctor now. I went in, I scheduled my time. They send you a link. You hit the link, and then boom, you're there with the camera. She can see you, and this lady was right there, and I could see her.
Technology's pretty great, isn't it, Chad?
It's amazing. And
I've done that a couple times. It is really convenient when you just can jump on a Zoom and be like, yo, what's up? Kind of a thing, rather than going into the doctor's office. 100% with you.
My mind was blown. All I did was take a couple of pictures of my back so she could see the spots, and there's a little link. You just upload the pictures right there. It took like 4 minutes, and she was very nice. And she said, you know, you should probably get a primary care physician, because I tried to say, you know, it'd be really nice if you could write me a couple of prescriptions or maybe give me double the dose and I could save one for 8 months down the road. She declined me and said, you need to get a primary care physician, and then she'll give you an ongoing prescription. And you don't have to go through this hassle anymore. But online doctors are the bomb. All right, we'll come back, and when we do, we'll dive back into free agency. Jump on board. I'd love to hear your voice. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can always stream the show, listen, podcast on our free iHeartRadio app. Sean Hyken is going to join me at 4:20. Chris Burkhardt in studio at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, NBA free agency is underway. The league has announced that the salary cap for the new season will be 154.6 million. The luxury tax threshold is at 187.8 million. Last night, the Trailblazers and center DeAndre Ayton agreed to a buyout for the final year on his deal. According to reports, Ayton gave back 10 million, meaning Portland will pay Ayton 25 mil, and the other 10 mil will come off the salary cap. Shams reported that Ayton and his team approached the Blazers for the buyout. Jason Quick reporting that Ayton was often a headache for the team with tardiness and attitude issues. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider, coming up at 4:20 with more details. The Blazers did not extend a qualifying offer to Jabari Walker, meaning he'll become an unrestricted free agent. The Jazz and Jordan Clarkson are finishing a buyout. Jaren Jackson Jr. agreed to a $254 million extension with the Grizzlies. And from the NFL, multiple teams mulling over trade offers for TJ Watt. All right, Sean Highkin going to join me coming up in 20 minutes. LeBron James has opted in to his $52.6 million player option for the upcoming season. That, according to Clutch Sports. His agent, Rich Paul, said, quote, LeBron wants to compete for a championship. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage of his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. That's very interesting. Well, LeBron has a no-trade clause, so if the Lakers were going to deal LeBron, which I doubt is going to happen, he would have to okay it. But I think what's going on now is that, you know, usually what he's done over the last couple of years is when he comes up on that final year, he signs a new deal with like a 1+1. I think this is the last year that LeBron's going to play for the Lakers. This is it for L.A. Now, is he done at the end of the year? Is he going to retire? I don't know. But I do think this is his last season in L.A. And the Lakers are now in a position after acquiring Luka Doncic where they have to build the team and construct for the future with Luka in mind. It's his team now, and they have to build accordingly. And the Lakers would probably like that $53 million to come off the books. And for LeBron, you're going to see this from his PR team. He knows now that he's not going to be able to win another championship, more than likely. I mean, the Lakers are not good enough to do that in the Western Conference that is deep and ultra-talented. And I doubt he's going to ask for a trade because if he were to go to another team and that team had to give up assets or players to acquire him and weaken their stance, that would defeat the purpose of trying to put himself in a position to win another championship. But you watch his PR team. He's got his guys in the media. They're going to be spinning the news hard to try and find a way to make the case that he, not MJ, is the greatest of all time, which, of course, is complete and utter nonsense. But LeBron and his team will continue to do what they can. But the big thing working against him is he's got 4 rings. Technically 3.5 because one of those rings came in the bubble. And even Alex Caruso knows that that championship doesn't really count. Similar to the Dodgers winning the title in their COVID year. Not the same as last year when they won the World Series. So that's where LeBron's at. Got to be frustrating for him, His son plays for the Lakers. He probably wants to be there with his son. He probably loves living in Los Angeles with all the other business opportunities that he has. But the only real way he can compete for a championship is by going to a different team. But the Lakers are now building for the future with Luka Doncic, not LeBron James. Now, it is the start of free agency. We're about an hour in, and there is some news, but I think not as hot and heavy as it normally has been in years past, and that's because of the new CBA and the way teams are trying to navigate and avoid some of the penalties that are out there. It's very difficult. But Shams is busy right now. D'Angelo Russell has agreed on a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Mavericks. Elsewhere, free agent guard Trey Jones has agreed to a 3-year, $24 million deal to return to the Chicago Bulls. Elsewhere, free agent forward Jake LaRavia has agreed to a 2-year, $12 million deal with the Lakers. He had a good finish to the year last year with the Kings. Elsewhere, the Grizzlies and Cole Anthony's reps at Excel Sports are working toward a resolution that allows Memphis to create the necessary cap space to renegotiate and get that deal done with Jaren Jackson. The Grizzlies and guard Cam Spencer have agreed to a 2-year, $4.5 million fully guaranteed contract. And the big news here, Dorian Finney-Smith is out. No longer with the Lakers, agrees to a 4-year, $53 million deal with the Rockets, who are going to be really good next year. And the Rocket execs get another 3-and-D type wing after losing Dylan Brooks in that deal for Kevin Durant. Also, Paul Reed, 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Pistons. And the Pistons probably looking at the Eastern Conference right now like, hey, we're coming off a good year, a successful showing in the playoffs. Maybe now with the conference being upside down with injury, we can look to make a move. And then the big money of the day goes to Jaren Jackson Jr., $240 million max deal with the Grizzlies. I think I said 254 in the update. I misspoke. $240 million. That, my friends, is some big cash. 5 years, 240. He's good. Renegotiation and extension. So the Grizzlies lock up Jaren Jackson Jr. Also, a restricted free agent, Santi Aldama, has agreed to a 3-year, $52.5 million deal to return to the Grizzlies. That is some big money. And now you're up to date. That's pretty much everything that's going down. Jordan Clarkson is finalizing a contract buyout with the Utah Jazz. Now, for the Trailblazers, there's no news right now. They've been linked to Luke Kennard, but the big news came down last night, a few days after they made that deal, sending Anthony Simons to the Boston Celtics. They got back Drew Holiday, sending out a couple of second-round picks. Well, they came to terms on a buyout for DeAndre Ayton. And I'll just give you the simple math here. He was supposed to make $35 million this year. They agreed to a buyout of $25 million. So the Blazers are going to save $10 million on their salary cap, which is going to give them access to the full mid-level exception. So that's good news for the Trailblazers. They get that type of flexibility. And from what I understand, when you go into the buyout market, players are not usually going to give back a large portion of their money. But under these circumstances, the Blazers got back 30%. But most importantly, it gives them the flexibility to be able to go out and operate with that full mid-level exception and avoid potential future tax penalties. So very good for the Trailblazers. And if you're asking, well, why would DeAndre Ayton do that when he was guaranteed $35 million? Well, he probably sees a value in becoming an unrestricted free agent. And my guess is he's probably got a deal in place. His agent's got a deal in place, or they have a good idea that they're going to be wanted by 2 or 3 teams. And they'll be able to get a deal with ease. So it gives Ayton the flexibility to be able to go out and play for a team of his choosing and get a new contract and be able to play for a contender. My guess is he would go to a contender. The Lakers need a center. DeAndre Ayton would fit that mold. And then you move on from there. Now, Shams is reporting that Ayton and his crew approached the Blazers about a buyout. And Jason Quick's reporting that Ayton was a headache for the Trailblazers with tardiness and attitude issues at times. Now, I can only tell you what I know or have heard about Ayton throughout the course of the season. His teammates love him. He's close with them. I had heard about some tardiness issues. My guess is he's probably not the only player in the NBA that has that. In regards to attitude, I haven't heard anything specific about attitude. I just know that he got pulled from a game last year because Chauncey Billups didn't like his spirit out there on the floor. I think that's a pretty good example of attitude. And like a lot of players in the NBA, when he was engaged, he was a double-double machine. When he wasn't engaged, he was lost on defense and making mistakes. There's a lot of players in the league like DeAndre Ayton. I like him. I think he's a good dude. And I think he took a lot of heat based on how things went down in Phoenix. And I think a lot of that wasn't on his shoulders, but he took the blame for it. But for DeAndre Ayton, he's a flawed player. He's not a perfect center. He's more of an antiquated type center and not a great defender, but a terrific rebounder and a very good scorer in the mid-range. So his style doesn't necessarily fit perfectly with today's NBA. And there you have it. It's unfortunate for the Blazers that they were unable to get a player in return. My guess is the reason why they didn't do a deal, one, they would have had to have taken money back or attached an asset to him to move him out. And the Blazers, as I told you before free agency began, they didn't want to do a net negative. They might do a net neutral, but not a net negative where they're giving up assets to unload a player. That doesn't make sense. And I doubt they're going to do that with Jeremy Grant. They won't do a net negative. So there's no market for Ayton, but you agree on a buyout and you're able to save yourself some money and gain flexibility as a result. So I think it's a win. It's absolutely a win. And also, you move him off the roster, which creates more room for your young guys to be able to play. Donovan Clingan, and hopefully here in the near future, Young Hansen. And now, all of a sudden, the Blazers' decision to go out and acquire a center on draft night doesn't look so bad. They know Ayton's on his way out. Robert Williams has got nothing but injury problems since he arrived in Portland. And you got Dwap Reef. So, Young Hansen, they must really believe in Young Hansen. And we heard from Mike Schmitz. They've been scouting him for 2 years. They're well on their way. Now, Scotty Bethune reaches out and asked me a question. He said, Chad, do they only get back the $10 million or do they also get back whatever he signs for somewhere else? That's a very good question. I have read two different summaries. Dave Deckard wrote this, Scott, in regards to the piece today. He said, this is what he wrote at BlazersEdge.com, Dave Deckard. Let's say Ayton is bought out for $30 million. The Blazers will owe him $30 million minus the amount of his new contract with his next team for the 2025-26 season. If he signs for $5 million with his new team, the new team will pay him $5 million and have that much counted against their salary cap. The Blazers will pay the remaining $25 million from the buyout, and that amount will remain on Portland's salary cap for the year. Well, I asked somebody else, a couple other people, how that works, and that information I believe that Dave gave is not 100% correct. They agreed to a buyout, $25 million. The Blazers will pay the $25 million. They get the $10 million to come off the salary cap, and whatever Ayton signs for, the Blazers will not get additional relief in the salary cap, which is what I understood it as of last night. And then I read Deckard's story. Then I confirmed with a couple other people, and I believe that they will not get any more reduction. They agreed to the buyout. It's $10 million that will come off the books, and that is that. All right, Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer Insider, with more details from the Rose Garden Report on Ayton and the buyout is coming up next. You can reach out 503-248-0620 or hit me up on social at Chad and Rip City. Free agency is underway. Chris Burkhardt going to join me in studio at 5. All right, it took a few minutes, but now Shams Charania's account is on fire. There are deals going down everywhere. And Joe Cronin's been a very busy man as well. And joining us right now is our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, the one and only Sean Highkin is back. Sean, what was your reaction last night when you got word that the Blazers and DeAndre Ayton had reached an agreement on a buyout?
A little bit surprised, but once you kind of figure out what the circumstances were behind it, which were that the Blazers had been talking to different teams about trying to trade him, but it was going to be pretty tough to do without taking back money beyond this coming season, which the Blazers didn't really want to do. And then with DA coming up on a new contract, on the last year of his contract, and he, at his age wants to get paid at least one more time. And given that the Blazers just drafted centers back to back in the first round and 2 drafts in a row, I think everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall. And, with him being willing to give back enough money to get the Blazers enough under the tax to be able to have some flexibility, now he gets to do whatever as far as going to a different situation. It just kind of made sense for both sides. But yeah, it was definitely one that was surprising in the moment.
Yeah, normally in a buyout situation, the team that's doing the buyout doesn't necessarily win, but when you give back 30% of your contract and the Blazers are able to save $10 million and have access to the full mid-level exception, I kind of like the move, Sean, because you clear out room for your young guys to be able to play. You have access to the full mid-level exception, and you don't have to give up any assets or attach any assets to Ayton to get him to move on. That's not bad.
No, it's not. And I mean, given the amount of money that he gave up, which is more than people usually give up in a buyout agreement, he must, we'll see probably in the next couple of days or so, where he winds up. But it seems like he probably is going to be able to get to make up that $10 million on a one-year deal somewhere, just kind of a prove-it deal, get to a different situation, whether that's the Lakers or somewhere else. And then the Blazers, to your point, just, they get a little bit more flexibility. And the thing I really took away from it is they must really feel like Donovan Clingan and Young Hansen are ready to go. Chauncey did say at Young's introductory press conference that, that he feels like he's not a project and he'd be ready to play right now. Which, when a coach says that at a draft pick's introductory press conference, that's what a coach is supposed to say. But the fact that they were willing to just buy out DeAndre Ayton and not even trade him and get anything back for him, they must really believe that him and Clingan are both ready to, really take the reins here.
Yeah, there's no question, because now Clingan would be the presumptive starter at center. You've got Duop Reef, who can, fill minutes at the position, but he's kind of a different type of center, the pick-and-pop guy. And then you have Robert Williams III, who, he's played, 26 games since he came over from Portland. So injuries continue to define his career, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think we're going to see more young Hansen this year maybe than what I had originally thought.
Yeah, and, that's kind of your center rotation now, with Robert Williams, who obviously I don't think he's, untouchable in a trade, but I don't think he's being, actively shopped right now. I think the Blazers would be perfectly fine bringing him into training camp if they don't find a deal for him, but that's really not going to eat too much into the amount of time that the two young guys get to play at center, because even if Rob is healthy and Rob is able to play, he's not going to be able to play a ton of minutes, and he's probably still not going to be able to play back-to-back. So it's not like, if DeAndre Ayton was still here and he was still, and he was healthy, he has to start. He probably has to play 25, 30 minutes a game because of kind of his stature in the league. So just getting him, getting that out of the way and letting him, go to a different situation, it really just clarifies a lot for kind of at least that position in their rotation.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. There's been a lot of deals announced over the last 20 to 25 minutes. What's been the one that's caught your eye the most? Is it Denver going out and dealing Michael Porter Jr.? Is it something else? What's caught your eye?
That would be the biggest one, right? Like the fact that, it's giving up an unprotected first round pick in 2032 is a lot to give up to get off of Michael Porter Jr. But this also, it saves them a lot of money, so they're going to be able to, make some different upgrades around Jokic, and you already saw them bring back Bruce Brown on a one-year deal. But, Cam Johnson is also still, a a guy who can probably slide right into that spot. You know, a good shooter with size. He'll be able to, you know, he'll be able to kind of step into that spot just fine. So I think that was a really good move for Denver, even though they gave up a lot to get off of the Michael Porter money.
Yeah, how about the Rockets? After losing Dylan Brooks in the KD trade, they go out and pay $53 million to Dorian Finney-Smith, another 3-and-D guy. He should fit perfectly down there.
Yeah, that's kind of the type of guy that they're loading up on. It's kind of similar to, you know, the strategy. Obviously, it's a different caliber of player, some of the guys that they have, but they kind of have the same strategy that the Blazers do about, like, they just want, you know, wing defenders, they want athletic guys, they just want to have, you know, all of those types of guys. You put DFS with, you know, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, who they just extended, some of those guys, and it's just, you know, they're going to be able to defend pretty much any type of lineup.
All right. So
by the way, Luke Cornett has agreed. This is breaking in real time. Luke Cornett has agreed to a 4-year, $41 million deal with the San Antonio Spurs. This is all just like breaking in real time. Yeah, how about that?
Wow. Yeah, and Kevon Looney is now on his way to the New Orleans Pelicans, getting 2 years and $16 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hot and heavy out there. It's crazy. So is it still the same for you? Do you think Jeremy Grant is kind of priority number one? What are you looking at for the Blazers now that they've created some flexibility and have access to the full mid-level?
Well, I think they would love to find a trade for him this summer where they don't take back too much long-term money. But, you know, you're looking at the market. I don't really know how much of a market there's going to be for him. Like, you look at, you know, some of these other, you know, these guys that are Cole Anthony getting bought out, Jordan Clarkson getting bought out, like, you know, some of these guys that, you know, teams have shopped around, and, you know, even, you know, DeAndre Ayton, you know, he's making a lot of money and he's on an expiring contract. The Blazers couldn't really find a trade they like for him, getting bought out. And yeah, I mean, maybe a team will talk themselves into, you know, Grant just had a down year, but just with this CBA, it's a lot of money to have to move around and find a team willing to take on. So, I mean, I think it should be their number one priority to get something done there this summer. But I don't know if it's really necessarily a lock that it ends up happening.
All right, I need you to clear something up. I called you earlier to ask you about it. I've had a few people ask questions about it from the time that my show started. So, with the Blazers' buyout with DeAndre Ayton, they agree to a $25 million buyout. So the Blazers save $10 million that will come off of their cap, which is very good because they have created some flexibility. Now, when Ayton signs his new deal with whatever team he's going to play for, does any of that money come off of the books of Portland, or is the buyout agreement they agreed upon the final number?
The buyout that they agreed to is the buyout that they agreed to. The $10 million that DA agreed to give back is what's coming off the Blazers' books. They're paying him the other $25 no matter what, and then whatever he does with, you know, however much he signs for with whatever team he signs with, that's a completely separate thing.
All right, so if he signs a 2-year, $20 million deal, he'll get that money from that team, and the Blazers will pay out the $25 million that they owe him for this coming year after the buyout agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. The 25 is what's what's staying on the Blazers books for the rest of the season.
And is that a number, the $25 million? Would they stretch that out, or do you think they'll just eat the entire number this year?
I've been told that they're going to just eat the number this year and just kind of wash their hands of it.
Yeah, which I that's kind of what I want them to do, because I don't want them to stretch it out, and then 3 years down the road they're still, you know, in a situation where they still got that on the books.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, especially after they took on so much long-term money with the Drew Holiday deal, I think they're very, and this is again why they didn't end up finding a trade that they were comfortable doing for DeAndre Ayton, was they really are focused on having flexibility next summer, not necessarily for free agency, but just to be able to do different stuff with bringing in, you know, with making different deals and doing different things with different salary slots. As of right now, and we just got this, the league just sent out a memo to teams right before the, oh, by the way, Clint Capella to Houston now. That's another one that just
Capella's
happened.
going back to Houston?
Yeah. But anyway, so the league just sent out a memo to teams like right before free agency began a couple hours ago that said that the salary cap next summer. Like this summer, it went up the full 10%. Next summer, that's projected to only go up 7%. So teams are not going to have, it's not going to be just like automatically with this new TV deal. It's going to go up 10% every summer. So with that, the Blazers are being pretty mindful, I think, of all the different, taking back long-term money beyond this year. And even with Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday both on the books, with the Ayton now dead cap coming off, Matisse Thybulle coming off, and Robert Williams coming off after this coming season, they're still going to have about $50 million in cap space projected, even with the cap not going up by as much as people thought that it would. And I would think a good chunk of that, maybe 20, 25, whatever it ends up being, is going to go to whatever they do with Shaedon Sharpe as far as a new deal for him, whether they do that by the deadline in October or they wait until next summer and do it. But then they'll still have a pretty decent amount of money left over after that, and that's if they can't find a trade for Jeremy Grant and get that money off the books.
That's a beautiful thing. Have you what do you think the Blazers are looking for in the open market?
I don't have any names. I think if I had to guess, I think it's shooters. I think shooting would be, especially since they traded away Anthony Simons. I think shooting is something that they it would not be a bad idea for them to fortify a little bit. So I saw a report earlier that Luke Kennard was somebody that they were interested in. I don't know if he's necessarily worth the full mid-level, but someone like that, some sort of that type of player, like a shooter with size who that you could bring in and have as kind of a bench piece. I think their starting lineup, they have enough guys that are in the mix to start, so it's really just kind of bench stuff. But they have to do something. I don't know what they're going to do, but right now, so after they bought out DeAndre Ayton, and I'm expecting that Delano Banton and Jabari Walker, their two free agents, are both not going to be back. They have 13 players under contract right now. Legally, by the rules, you have to have 14 under contract on opening night, so they have to add one more player. I don't know whether that's going to be signing somebody in free agency, or if you do find a trade for Jeremy Grant, maybe you bring back two players, and that's how you get to the 14 roster spots. But it's they do have to do something. They have to add at least one more player to get the roster CBA legal by opening night.
Okay, all right. So 13. So if they were to, in theory, if they dealt Grant and they wanted to, bring back two players, they got the room to do that now. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good thing. So that would put them, if they traded Grant, get two players back, Grant's gone, that puts you at 12, plus the two that are coming in, that gives you 14 players.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think about Luke Kennard? Do you like his game as a shooter?
I mean, that's a skill set that they need. I don't know if he does enough else that he would be worth giving the full mid-level for, but that's just one name that I saw. Is it was one of those ones where I forget which reporter had it, but it was one of those ones where they were listed among 7 different teams that are expected to show interest in him. And usually when that's the way that the report is worded, that's probably the agent just trying to jump to goose the market. But that's the only actual name that has been connected to them. I don't know how likely that is or isn't.
You got one or two ideas on teams that would make sense for Ayton?
I mean, I think the most likely scenario is probably he ends up in LA with the Lakers. The other one is maybe Milwaukee. But I would guess the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers are so they don't really have a reliable center, and he's a guy that he's enough of a name that I think LeBron would probably be happy with it. That whatever this in my opinion, kind of fake news cycle going on right now about is LeBron going to leave the Lakers? I think getting him would be enough to, and they also just added Jake LaRavia in free agency, so that's a decent, bench wing kind of fringe starter type. So I think the Lakers are probably the most likely place for DA to end up.
All right, one more question for you. Now that you've had more time to kind of unpack it, what are some things that you've heard from the people that you've spoken with on the Blazers' addition of Young Hansen?
I think a lot of people still feel like, based on their own draft evaluations, it was a little bit of a reach and that people didn't have him that high on their boards. But I think more and more you're starting to hear that teams and, people around the league kind of respect the fact that Joe Cronin and his team just took a swing and didn't really care what the consensus was or what the mock drafts were saying and decided, this is our guy. We want to get this guy.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It sounds like the Blazers, did they scout him more than anybody else, or were there other teams that were all over scouting him as well?
Well, we don't know that because we didn't know until last Wednesday when they drafted him that they had done this much work on him. Yeah. And then it started to come out later that, Brooklyn was interested and Minnesota was interested. So for all we know, those teams could have also been secretly scouting him and trying to keep it quiet too.
That's a good point. All right. Well, what else are you looking for? Like, I'm curious about what's going on in your mind. Like, what are you interested in seeing what takes place over the next 12 hours as we move into the nighttime?
Well, I'm interested in whether the Blazers add somebody else now, whether it's through a trade or free agency, or they decide to just kind of keep it dry and, keep this mid-level exception just kind of in the quiver, so to speak, to see what what comes along. The other thing that you have to keep in mind about the mid-level exception with the new CBA, you can basically also use those exceptions as trade exceptions. So if they wanted to trade for a player making up to $14 million, they could do that without sending any salary out. So that's another avenue where if they don't love any of the players on the free agent market, but there's a player on another team that team is willing to move just to offload salary, and it's up to that amount, that's a way that they could add a player too. But it's still pretty early, so I don't know what, I don't know how that's all going to play out. But that's definitely what I'm keeping an eye on, is just who they add, because because of only having 13 players under contract, they have to add somebody before the start of training camp.
All right, you just brought up a good point. I forgot to ask you what is the full mid-level worth per year for signing a player? Is it 14?
Around 14, yeah, and then there's the little step raises. So it's basically an equivalent deal to it's basically the deal that Dorian Finney-Smith just got, the 4-year 53, which is the same deal, which is the same number as Denny Avdia, by the way. So
Denny Avdia, that would be arguably the best bargain in the NBA. Denny Avdia.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that 4-year 54 or 53, whatever that final number ends up being. That's basically the type of contract they'd be able to sign somebody to.
Okay. All right, Sean. Nice work, my friend. What a wild and crazy day it is for you. And I have a feeling we'll be talking again in the very near future based on what takes place over the next 24 to 48 hours.
That sounds good.
All right. Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report. Check him out, rosegardenreport.com. He is our Trailblazers insider, and I do have a feeling that we're going to be talking to him again in the near future. And that's just kind of what I see happening. And we'll see what happens with the Blazers. So, again, that full mid-level, I got to be honest with you people. Like, when it comes to the salary cap and the CBA and some of the details, like, it's confusing. But this is an easy number for all of us to understand. The full mid-level exception that the Blazers now have access to after agreeing to the buyout and getting $10 million in relief from DeAndre Ayton. It's very nice of him. 4 years and $53 million would be a full mid-level exception. And as Highkin pointed out, you could use that as a trade exception as well. And I think you know where I stand. The biggest thing in my mind, the biggest priority, is to find a deal for Jeremy Grant. And I hope they can get that done, because that would be perfect. So there you have it. There you have it. That's where we're at. And the deals are, it started slow. But as we've gotten deeper into the start of free agency, now an hour and 40 minutes in, there are all sorts of deals going down. Free agent guard Karis LeVert has agreed to a 2-year, $29 million deal with the Detroit Pistons. Clint Capella, 3 years, $21.5 million deal with the Rockets. He's back in H-Town. And the Rockets are trying to load up to win a championship right now. That's crazy. Luke Cornett. What a great country this is. Luke Cornett, 4 years and $41 million. I had no idea when I woke up this morning that Luke Cornett was worth $41 million, but apparently he is. Kevon Looney, one of the great guys in the NBA, love him. 2 years, $16 million going to the Pelicans. D'Angelo Russell, 2 years, $13 million to go to the Dallas Mavericks. And the big story of the day so far, the Denver Nuggets, who were able to trade Michael Porter Jr. to the Nets in exchange for Cam Johnson. They saved themselves about $17 million in cap space. And then they go out and bring back Bruce Brown Jr. He agrees to a 1-year deal with the Nuggets. So Denver out there making things happen and getting better. And that's something that Nikola Jokic, if he's even paying attention right now, he's probably with his horses or his boys kicking back some coldies. But the Nuggets are out there very busy. Michael Porter Jr. in Brooklyn now in exchange for Cam Johnson. They also ship out a first-round pick in 2023. But cap savings, and they get Bruce Brown back. Kevin Porter Jr. has agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Milwaukee Bucks. Hopefully Porter does not gamble. Ty Jerome, 3 years, $28 million deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. Jerome had a great year. He was fun to watch. And there you have it. That's what's cracking right now. Trey Jones, 3 years, $24 million to return to the Bulls. Jake LaRavia, a fully guaranteed 2-year, $12 million deal with the Lakers. I wonder if LeBron thinks Jake LaRavia is a needle mover.
Probably not as much as Bronny is.
The Grizzlies and guard Cam Spencer, 2 years, $4.5 million. And the big money today went to Jaren Jackson Jr., a full max extension with the Grizzlies, $240 million. And Dorian Finney-Smith signs a 4-year, $53 million deal with the Rockets. So the Rockets get Dorian Finney-Smith. They get Clint Capella. They've got Kevin Durant. And keep in mind, this is a team that was the second seed in the West last year. Chris Burkhart going to join me in studio coming up at 5. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right. I've got an issue. I got a personal issue. I know that's a big surprise. I'll share that in just a moment. Telephone number 503-248-0620. Let's go out to Pat, who is in Portland. Pat, I appreciate the phone call. You're up on the Rip City Drive. What's on your mind?
Hey, Chad. Nice to talk to you. I'm a little disappointed in the sense of a Blazer fan, in the sense that if I read this thing correctly, it looks like we've given up potentially 4 players. We've lost some point production that I don't see the players we have right now are going to be able to make up. And, to be in the playoffs next year, I think we're going to have to win at least 5 to 10 more games. And if we have one of our potential 5 starters start and one of those guys go down next season, we're toast. I mean, at least right now, unless they make a move that we can bring in a good shooter. But I'm a little concerned. I wish we would have had some picks in the second round that might have been able to give us a little bit of shooting off the bench and maybe develop them, for years down the road. I'm a little bit concerned.
Well, I appreciate the phone call, Pat, and I'm basically a concerned individual at all times. I'm always concerned about my sports teams, and I can always find new ways to worry about my sports teams. So with the Trailblazers, you're right. The one thing they will need right now is offense. They need someone that can step up and knock down shots. Now, they're also hoping on, continued internal improvement and development, particularly with guys like Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, Tamani Kamara, and Denny Avdia. But they do need shooting. The good thing is with this maneuver to get rid of Ayton, they've opened up some flexibility, Pat, to where they can use the full mid-level exception. And that will allow them to go out and sign a shooter. And I asked Heiken, what their number one priority is probably now, and that's to go out and add shooters. And again, they're not done making moves. If Jeremy Grant is dealt based on his cap number, they're probably going to get a couple of players in return. And hopefully those are players that also can come in and contribute on the offensive end of the floor. But again, this team is being it's different from the teams we've had over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Gone are the days of high offense, big offensive teams, and no defense. This is a team that's going to win games by being physical, by being defensive-minded, creating turnovers, and getting out in transition. And the good thing is, even if you lack some of the shooting that teams desire in the NBA, if you can lock teams up and defend and get stops and create easy buckets, you can win basketball games. And my target number, if you want my target number, my personal Chad target number for next year in terms of wins, 45 is kind of where I'm setting the number. They won 36 last year, got off to a horrendous start to beginning of the year. But if they get off to a better start, I think this team has a chance with their defensive capabilities to hit 45 wins, which would put them right there in the, in postseason contention. Even in the Western Conference, which is deep and very talented. But that's where we're at. Anthony Simons, his numbers did come down a bit last year. Great offensive player, no defense. Drew Holiday, keep in mind, shoots the 3 ball, I think, at around 37%. Drew Holiday can shoot the 3. But the 2 guys they're really going to look for to take that next step is Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp. And I keep saying this, and I'll say it again. This whole rebuild, this whole turnaround, the focus is on those 2 guards. Those were the ones who were taken high in the lottery. Those are the 2 guys with all the incredible potential. They're the ones that have to hit. They need Scoot and Shaden to hit for this turnaround to be much smoother. So the internal development is going to continue to be very important. But yes, I would be stunned. They're going out there looking for guys who can stroke it. And you need that. Every team needs a guy that can stroke it. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. I didn't have time to get to my personal issue. I'll try and make time for that. But Chris Burkhart's standing by. And he's going to join me, and we'll talk Blazers. He's got Courtside Monday coming up at 6. If you want to jump on board like Pat did, 503-248-0620. That's your telephone number. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Hey, what's going on, my friends? It's now 5 o'clock. Chad here. We start with the Trailblazers. Now that NBA free agency is open and has been for 2 hours, last night they agreed to a buyout with center DeAndre Ayton. According to the reports today, Ayton gave back $10 million. The Blazers will pay Ayton $25 million. The other $10 million will come off the salary cap, which gives Portland access to the full mid-level exception. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report, joined the show. You can podcast on our free iHeartRadio app. Also, the Trailblazers did not extend a qualifying offer to Jabari Walker. The Jazz and Jordan Clarkson are also working on a buyout agreement. In other news today around the NBA, the Denver Nuggets have traded Michael Porter Jr. to Brooklyn in exchange for Cam Johnson, and also went out and signed Bruce Brown, is going back to Denver on a one-year deal. And Shams now reporting that Brook Lopez has agreed to a 2-year deal worth $18 million to join the Clippers. All right, Chris Burkhardt going to join me here in a moment, getting you up to date on the deals that have been reported. Now the free agency is 2 hours old. Shams Charania has been very active. Brook Lopez has agreed to a 2-year, $18 million deal with the LA Clippers. Karis LeVert, 2 years, $29 million with the Detroit Pistons. Clint Capella, 3 years, $21.5 million to go back to Houston with the Rockets. Houston's been very active. Luke Cornett, 4 years, $41 million with the San Antonio Spurs. Elsewhere, Kevon Looney, 2 years, $16 million to join the New Orleans Pelicans. D'Angelo Russell, 2 years, $13 million to sign with the Dallas Mavericks. Elsewhere, in the big news today with Denver, they traded Michael Porter Jr. and a first-round pick, unprotected in 2023, to the Nets in exchange for Cam Johnson. They save a bunch of money, about $17 million on that deal. And then they went out and signed Bruce Brown Jr., who's going back to Denver. He agrees to a one-year deal. Kevin Porter Jr. has agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Milwaukee Bucks. Ty Jerome, 3 years, $28 million to sign with the Memphis Grizzlies. Elsewhere, Trey Jones has agreed to a 3-year, $24 million deal to return to the Chicago Bulls. Jake LaRavia, 2 years, $12 million with the Lakers. And the big news today for the Grizzlies, a full guaranteed max extension for Jaren Jackson Jr., $240 million spread out over 5 years. Cam Spencer, 2 years, $4.5 million with the Grizzlies. And Dorian Finney-Smith joins Clint Capella. He has agreed to a 4-year, $53 million deal with the Houston Rockets. Paul Reed has agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal to return to the Detroit Pistons. And there you have it. That's what's been happening today. Now, the Trailblazers, no signings that I have seen as of yet. The good news is with that Ayton buyout agreement, they now have access to the full mid-level exception. Joining me now is my good friend, Chris Burkhardt. Burkhardt, a lot of things going on around the league right now, but let's dive in on the DeAndre Ayton buyout agreement that we got word on last night. What was your reaction when you initially saw the deal?
A little shocking,
yeah.
I think for most people, but as is my approach when these things happen, is I instantly get into GM mode, right? I know a lot of people want to get into anger mode,
yeah,
and so it doesn't work when they start texting me and I give them my GM speak. But like I try to think of why this would happen. Why would they want to do that? How would it be beneficial to them? And when you start breaking down some of the things, I think it makes sense. Maybe it's not ideal, but it does make sense.
Yeah, so we know they were looking at possibly trying to get a deal for DeAndre Ayton. The problem is they would have had to have taken back money that would have gone past this upcoming season. What I didn't realize last night, I thought that buyouts, you would agree to a buyout, you would pay the player that buyout amount, but the full amount on their contract would count against your salary cap. I didn't realize that the buyout amount that you agreed to when they restructure, that the money that comes off of that buyout amount, it comes off your salary cap. I didn't know that. So when I knew that, and then we got word today that it was $10 million that Ayton agreed to give back to the Blazers, and they would save $10 million on the cap and get full access to the mid-level exception. Then I was like, man, that's a good deal. 30% he gave up. That's rare in a buyout market.
Yeah, and what did I tell you when you called me too? I was like 12 million is what my guess was, because as I told you, I was like, whatever money he's giving up, he's gonna go instantly get back. So there's no harm for him. He's like, whatever. Maybe I'll go sign for a team that does have that full MLE, and maybe the Lakers give me 14.1 mil. Over 3 years or what it is. But guess what? Yeah, I took 10 off my deals in Portland, but I gained 4 in the process.
Yeah, he'll get probably a 2 or 3 year contract, probably somewhere between, don't you think, between 10 and 15 million per year?
You would think.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes absolute sense to me. So,
do the Lakers make the most sense for Ayton?
Without a doubt. I think without a doubt they make the most sense. And then that also changes just a little bit in the fact that, like, as you just saw, like Brooke Lopez going to the Clippers, like that opens up some center spots up there. I mean, I can think that could make sense. It's something Sean Hyken said when he was on too. There's a couple teams that make sense. Absolutely.
All right. What do you think the Blazers are looking to shop for in free agency?
Shooters. They need a shooter. And then if they fully intend to move off of Jeremy Grant in any way, then they're going to need power forward depth. Because right now that power forward room is Denny and Jeremy, unless you want to put Chris Murray and 2 in there a little bit too. But that's not a very deep power forward room. Obviously, Jabari Walker probably not returning since, they didn't extend that qualifying offer. And, I don't know if he was the long-term answer either. So I think depth at the power forward position, ideally a guy who can play the 3 and the 4 just to give them that versatility. And then, I think they need shooters because right now that's what they're lacking.
And the fact that they were willing to pay Ayton to leave town, what does that tell you about what the team thinks about young Hansen, if anything?
I think it doesn't necessarily state what they think of him long term, but it does state that they want to get him on the court as soon as possible to see what they really have, right? They don't want to slow play his development. They don't want to sit there and bounce back. And Joe and Chauncey were asked about it at the introductory press conference. Like, is he going to play time in the G League? And it was a very quick no. Like, he's going to be up here with us. And so now they're kind of speeding that process to get him on the court. If Robert Williams is here and he's healthy, keep in mind, I would fully expect Robert Williams to play just like last year if he is here, where he's not playing either the front end or the back end of back-to-backs, right?
They really need him now to be able to fill some of those minutes next to Klingon.
Exactly. And so, so now you got Young right there, I think, ready to go. So that's what I think, is they're ready to see what they have.
If you talk to most pros who have been through that whole process of being a rookie and then playing through it and then developing into a solid vet, regardless of sport, most of them will tell you that they appreciate the opportunity to play when they were young because they felt like if you can survive the initial fire and it doesn't destroy you mentally, that you learn so much more by being out there on the floor. I like the idea of young Hansen being on the floor and getting a chance to play, on a regular basis, even if it's at a reduced minute total, just the experience of playing and going through some of the bumps and bruises and difficulties of being a rookie and learning how to play the center position, that could bode well for his long-term development.
Oh, no, you absolutely have to. I think there was a interview with Domantas Sabonis where he was looking at his clips and kind of giving his input as to what he thought he was as a player. And it was funny because I think his response was get ready to get physical. It's gonna be a physical game over here. That's what you need to get used to. And that's absolutely right. Like, that's what he needs to get used to those bumps, get used to those bruises, because he's going to see plenty of them.
Free agent Nickeil Alexander-Walker has agreed to a 4-year, $62 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks. That was expected because Minnesota just simply doesn't have the money to pay everyone. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker is on his way to Atlanta and got himself a nice payday. What moves that's been reported thus far has really caught your eye? Any?
I think it's just this working around the edges, but working around the edges in a smart way is Houston. I think that's a team that was right there, already good. I think Finney-Smith is a great depth play for them, obviously, with KD there.
And with Dylan Brooks on his way to Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. So they needed someone who could go in there and play defense. Finney-Smith, I've always been good on that end, was good in Dallas too. And then, obviously, the addition of Clint Capella. Now you got him and Steven Adams. Like, they're just going to be able to beat you up down low when they want to, and you're never going to get a reprieve from that. I like those moves a lot.
Trying to think now. So let's see here. KD and Thompson. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith might. I was trying to think of who that fifth starter is going to be. It might be Finney-Smith.
Maybe.
You got Şengün, KD, Amin Thompson, Fred VanVleet, and maybe Finney-Smith. It fills out that fifth guy in their rotation. But long and athletic, very similar to what we're seeing in Portland now with the type of guys they're bringing in. Long, athletic, two-way players, defensive-minded. But Houston now, they were the number 2 seed last year. If KD is healthy and can provide them some productive buckets in those half-court sets, they could be nasty. I think the Rockets last year were they were 9th in isolation plays, but 27th in points per possession in isolation. Kevin Durant's going to improve that number quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to break that down. I mean, what we thought about when you watch that team, you're like, gosh, they're doing good. They just need some more scoring there defensively with what Dylan Brooks was doing, right? They're like, okay, the defense there, but if they can just get some more reliable scoring, obviously all the young guys that they have, I mean, it's beautiful. And then we didn't even talk about even re-upping Jabari Smith Jr., who I thought was a shoo-in to be on the Blazers' radar if they were making moves. Like they've had a good offseason, Houston has.
I like Jabari Smith Jr. I know that he hasn't lived up to all the expectations, but I think he's a fine player. Houston's going to be legit next year. The Western Conference as a whole, so tough.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Nasty work.
It is. It's so tough from the top down. But the Trailblazers, the cool thing is now we're starting to see the definition. I mean, I'm now, especially with the addition, with the move of Ayton, it looks like we're going to get Scoot, Shaden, Klingon, Tamani, and Denny in that starting lineup. That's what it looks like.
It's absolutely what it looks like, which is what you wanted, right? And now you're going to get a chance to see it.
Let's go out to Dave in Salem. Dave, appreciate the phone call. You're up on the Rip City Drive. What is on your mind?
Hey, Chad, could you give us a lineup of the Blazers where they stand today? I one player I'm going to miss if they don't bring him back is Jabari Walker. I thought he had a great attitude and worked really hard. And they need good bench players. But who's on the lineup going forward as of today? That's all I had for you today, my friend.
I appreciate that. I'll pull it up. I know that the Trailblazers right now they got 13 players on the roster. They need, I think, Sean said by opening night they need a 14th player on the roster, so we know they got to add somebody. So they have some flexibility. If they were to trade Jeremy Grant, they could bring back 2 players. They got flexibility to make some moves. You could trade Grant, bring back a couple of players, and still be able to sign a free agent. So let's see if we can name the players off the top of our head and see if we can get all 13. So we have Scoot. We have Sharp. We have Klingon. That's 3. We have Denny and Tamani.
There's your starters. Good
there's
job.
Your starting 5. And then off the bench, we have, let's see here, Chris Murray. So Chris Murray is 1. We have Robert Williams the 3rd, so Time Lord. We've got Young Hansen, the rookie from China. We have, okay, let me think here. Drew Holiday. I'm trying to think here. I know we got Dewap Reeve. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 5. We got 10 players so far. Let's see here. Who else we got? Is Delano Banton considered a Trailblazer right now, or he's officially not on the team, right?
No, he's not.
Okay.
You got, I don't know, I missed your list, but you got Matisse Thybulle.
Oh, yeah, Tease.
And you also have Ryan Rupert.
Ryan Rupert. So we need one more player.
Young on there?
Yep. I'm doing this without having the roster right in front of me to see if I can come up with the 13.
Jeremy Grant is still
Jeremy Grant?
There you go.
See, I was already in my mind.
How could you forget?
I was already projecting Jeremy off the team. Okay, so here are your players right now, Dave. Scoot, Shaden, Klingon, Denny Avdia, Tamani Kamara, Chris Murray, Robert Williams III, Young Hansen, the rookie from China, Drew Holiday, Dewap Reeve, Matisse Thybulle, Ryan Rupert, and Jeremy Grant. Let's see here. Yeah, they need shooting, Chris. when you look at the names on paper, it's like, yeah, give us some of that shooting. But there you have it. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can call and become a part of the show right now. 503-248-0620. Do you think they can get a deal done for Grant? I know we want that, but do you think they can get it done? It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Because
you're going to have to take back money.
But here's the deal, Chad, too. Maybe they offload Grant, and that's where they take back. Maybe they take back 2 of those long-term contracts, or they have to give up an asset. But at some point, you have to understand that if you wanted to get off of Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton, if you took negative deals on every single one of those, you are handicapped like nobody's business. Now, the deal with Drew Holiday, everyone freaks out about the money, doesn't really handicap them. I don't think Boston is making that move unless they have to rearrange the chairs because of the second apron, right? DA, rather than make a bad move and take negative net assets back, you wiped your hands of them, saved money, and have helped yourself in free agency and beyond. So now if you end up taking one of those net negative deals for Grant, one net negative deal better than 3 net negative deals.
Yes, and Sean did say that he was told that the team is not going to do a stretch provision on Ayton.
It would make no sense.
It would make no sense. They're going to eat the money this year because that $25 million comes off the books at the end of the year. They have a chance, depending on what they do, to have some $50 million in cap space next summer. So you have flexibility with the young roster, which is quite nice. Let's go out to Jackie in Sherwood. Jackie, appreciate the phone call. You're up on the Rip City Drive. What's on your mind?
Hey, Chad, how have you been?
Very well. Nice to hear your voice, Jackie.
Oh, thanks. The last thing that I read about Drew Holiday, it said that he was pissed that he got traded here. What do we know? Is he going to come here, or what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'll share my thoughts with you. Here's what I know about Drew Holiday, Jackie. Number one, you got to remember that he has a very good relationship with Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups. From what I understand, when he was originally traded to Portland in the Dame deal, Joe Cronin, Chauncey Billups sat down with him, and they let him know that, hey, we appreciate you, and they worked with him to get him to a spot where he wanted to play. So Joe and Chauncey took care of Drew. So there's a good relationship there. Now, let's just be honest for a moment, Jackie. If you were playing for the Boston Celtics and they're contending for a championship and you're playing for the most storied franchise in NBA history and you live in Boston, big city, and you were suddenly traded to Portland, tucked away in the Northwest, and you go from a championship contender to a team that's in a rebuild, I mean, would you necessarily be excited about that? I mean, I wouldn't. In fact, that type of move, when you're not expecting it, I might be a little bit pissed off. So I understand why someone who, when they get dealt from Boston to Portland under these circumstances, might be a little bit upset, especially for people that might enjoy life in a big city. But here's what we know about Drew Holiday. Regardless of whether he was upset about the initial trade or not, he's a true professional. He's going to show up and he's going to go to work because that's the way he operates. He's not going to complain. He's not going to create an issue. He's going to show up and get to work. I don't think Robert Williams III was excited about being traded from Boston to Portland either. But you know how it is when people get here. If they haven't been around the town or the area, they'll be embraced by Rip City, and they will eventually fall in love with their surroundings.
I've literally, in my time covering this team, seen one player who didn't embrace being here and hated it the entire time.
Raymond Felton.
No, because I wasn't covering the team at the time.
Okay.
Great guess, though.
Aaron Aflalo.
Oh, Aaron Aflalo.
Aaron Aflalo is the only one.
That turned out to be a disaster of a trade. Yeah, but no one that I know has been traded to Portland's like, oh, yeah, Portland, baby. No, it's a small town, smaller than most NBA cities, but they get here and they get embraced by Rip City and they find out like, oh, I like it here. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Jackie, is it's no worry. Drew Holiday is going to show up and he's going to work. He is the ultimate pros pro, and he's considered one of the truly great guys in the NBA. He and his wife, like their family, legit. So he's going to show up and go to work and do his job the way he always does it. Balls to the wall, which I respect. But I don't have an issue with someone being upset. I'd be upset too. Wait a second, I'm competing for a championship, but now I'm not? That would suck. Now, we have a different perspective because we live here, and we've been here for a long time, so we understand the beauty and some of the things that this area has to offer. Same thing, if Drew Holiday got traded to Oklahoma City, would he be thrilled? Probably not. I'm from Oklahoma, and I love it because it's my land, it's my people, but if I got traded to Oklahoma City, I'd be like, what in the world's going on? But then once you get in and you get acclimated and start playing on a good basketball team, then you might find that you like it. But Drew Holiday is the pro's pro. He's going to be fine. All right, Chris Burkhart's here. We'll keep things rolling. If you want to jump on board like Jackie or like Dave, 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, Chris, I just found out today. So I've got this meeting with Coors Light next week. And it's one of those deals where a lot of the bosses are going to be there from Seattle and Portland. And it's up in Olympia. That's where the meeting's going to be. We're kind of meeting halfway in between Seattle and Portland.
Okay.
And so, of course, I get the email from our big boss, Marshall. And he's like, hey, I'll get the company rig and I'll just pick you up in Vancouver and we can ride up together. And the problem I have with that is like, I don't like to spend too much time outside of the workplace with any of my bosses, especially in the closed quarters of a vehicle, because I'm afraid and always have been that if they get to know me too much or ask me too many questions, they're going to be like, this guy's a complete buffoon. Why do we have him on staff? I don't want my boss to know too much about me. I'm not an over communicator. Like some people I know, they just communicate everything about their life. I try not to do that. I just assume most people don't care what I have going on. So anyways, I'm not too thrilled. But of course, when your boss is like, oh, I'll just come pick you up, we'll ride up together. I'm stuck. What are you going to do? No, I'm good. You can ride solo. I'll ride solo. Oh, well.
Yeah.
There you go.
You just ride with them.
But you've done that before with your boss, with the OSAA, when you guys are driving across the entire state, covering all these different tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
Does it work out okay?
Spent a lot of time in the car with old Peter Weber, so.
He's a good dude, though.
Very.
All right. We'll see how that shakes out. Now, my man Chris Burkhardt here, not only is he smarter than me, but I walked around the table in the studio to his side, and I was looking at his laptop, and he's put together a full spreadsheet of the Trailblazers roster with their salary and all the commitments. And you put the numbers together, and this deal where they agreed to the buyout with DeAndre Ayton actually makes a lot of sense, and it's going to give them flexibility to do a lot of things they want to do. What'd you come up with?
Well, obviously, as everyone reported, it gives them access to that full mid-level exception. So what does that mean? Casey Holdall tweeted out earlier today that the NBA officially announced their 25-26 season salary cap numbers, which is weird to think we are entering the 25-26 season, right? The salary cap is 154.6 mil. The tax level, 187.8. The first apron, 195.9. So if you look at where the team was sitting, everything included here, prior to the Anthony Simons deal and all the other things, they're sitting at a salary cap number of 170 mil. Okay, so obviously over the 154 cap, but still not into the tax, which is good. That's what gives them the ability to use that full mid-level exception. Now, once they traded for Drew Holiday, they still are not technically a tax team, so they have access to that full mid-level exception, which starts at 14.1 per year. But if they were to use that 14.1, they would have been about $1.5 million over the tax. So they would become a tax team in using that full mid-level exception. Now you look at the number breakdowns when you take away that 10 mil. So when DeAndre Ayton goes from 35.5 to 25.5, that makes their cap number 165. You add the 14 mil from the mid-level exception, and you still have about $8 million between where they're at and hitting that tax number. So that is a massive difference. It's from going over the tax to staying under the tax and still having money to deal with.
That's terrific. That's great. And I guess like you were mentioning with the flexibility that they're going to create over the next year, then all of a sudden when it comes time to pay up on some of the young guys, like Tamani Kamara, like Shaden Sharp, like Scoot Henderson, you have the flexibility to be able to do that.
Yeah, because you got to think that you do. You have Shaden Sharp who needs to get paid. You have Scoot Henderson who needs to be paid. Tamani Kamara, you always talk about
how much is two making right now?
2.2. He's on that
bargain.
He's on that second round pick. Juicy team friendly deal, right? So you start to factor in those things, and yeah, then you understand where this makes sense. And like I said, there's their wiggle room. Maybe they can take on some bad deals, air quotes, bad deals in getting off of Jeremy Grant, because you didn't do that with DA. You didn't do that necessarily with Anthony Simons. And as I want to point out with Anthony Simons too, everyone talks about Drew Holiday. And as I said, I don't think they made that move because they wanted to. They made that move because They had to. Otherwise, that second apron was just going to put a stranglehold on them. And so they need to get rid of him. They need to get rid of Porzingis while trying to stay as competitive as possible in the long run. Anthony Simons helped them. Drew comes back. And the reason I think Drew still has value, and everyone talks about last year, he had a down year. You look at his numbers, especially on the defensive side of the ball, right on par with Tumani Kamara, who what? He made second team All-NBA defense, right? The only reason Drew Holiday wasn't in consideration for that, Chad, is because he only played 62 games, and you have to play 65 to be eligible for all those postseasons awards and teams.
In his career, 3 second-team All-Defense. He's been named to the team 3 times. 3 times he's been named to the first-team All-Defensive team.
Yeah, and then people argue, well, he's 35. He's not going to get any better. You're not going to reverse father time. If he has a decline defensively and is a shell of himself in his prime, he's still a plus defender. So there's still value in him in the long run. I've said this when this happened. I do not expect him to be here for the remainder of his contract because especially come trade deadline time, there may be quite a few true contenders who come a-calling.
I'm excited. I love the fact that they're clearing out room to be able to really push their young guys ahead so they can play and continue to develop. That's what it comes down to. It's all about getting time and developing. And the same thing with young Hansen. I wouldn't have thought that the Blazers would be in this position, but now Ayton is out. Hansen will get a chance to play. You still got Robert Williams III, which will need to take up some minutes next to Klingon. But most importantly, Klingon will be the starter. That's great.
Yeah, and we can argue, Chad. You and I can argue, or we can argue with Blazer fans, or we can argue till the cows come home. I got to drop that back in there, right? That. About whether this move was a good move with what their return is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, this is exactly what everyone wanted. A door is now open for Donovan Klingon to start because if DeAndre Ayton was on this team, he's the starter on opening night. He's the best center, right? And now Donovan's your backup. Where does that put the guy you just drafted? All that. You've opened the door for both those guys to get their big playing time, right? Drew Holiday, we have debated whether or not he's going to start or not, but regardless, you made a choice. You were either going the scoot route or the ant route. You chose the scoot route. And as I made the analogy, maybe he has the permit for an extra half season before he gets his driver's license, right? But you have given him the path to take the car. You have made your decision, and that's a good thing. So they have opened up the doors that everyone wanted open.
How would you handle Shaden? Would you sign him since he's eligible for that early extension, or would you wait and have him become a restricted free agent and make him prove it this year?
I'd wait. I love Shaden Sharp. I want him to make a massive jump. I want him to be the best player on this team. He just hasn't shown that yet. He has not shown that he's worth that big fat raise yet. And I want him to go out there and earn that and then hit the market, and what anyone gives you, you know what? I'll match it, and I'm not letting you go anywhere.
Yeah, he just needs consistency. All right, let's see what else is going on. No new news to report over the last 10 to 15 minutes in terms of what Shams is reporting. Let's see here. Yeah, no big moves. You're all up to date on everything that's gone down. Trailblazers yet to sign anyone. One name that they've been linked to is Luke Kennard. How would you like him for shooting capabilities?
I mean, that is what he can do, right? And he is a guy that does make a lot of sense. That's exactly what they need. I don't know if he is full MLE type guy, but again, maybe you split that up and you get him for cheap, and then you use the rest of the MLE somewhere else. And one thing I found out about all this stuff too, when you break down numbers, Chad, it cracks me up because I remember with like Rodney Hood, they signed him to a deal that no one knew they had that much money to do it. And everyone's like, how'd you get the money? And Neil's like, oh, there's ways. You little loophole here, this and that. Like, they can always find a way. But Luke Kennard, for his career, Chad, 43.8% from beyond the arc.
Yeah.
Portland needs a guy like that.
Yeah.
I don't care if defense is lacking. I don't care if he's not a great passer. None of that. I need a guy that I can pass to, and he can hit shots. And that's what he's good at. Because guess what? If you can roll out Matisse Thybulle and Tumani Kamara and Denny and DC and Drew, defense is going to be just fine.
All right. I didn't get a chance to ask you yet, but and the reports have been conflicting. But let's say that what's your take on Drew Holiday being upset about being traded by Boston? and whether or not that's going to cause an issue here in Portland.
Well, considering the fact that thing was like, Tommy Boy when he's sitting in the sailboat and he's just stuck because the wind's not blowing.
Yeah.
That's what that was. The news was stuck and it was going nowhere because as soon as that air quote report happened, it died out. It was gone, and every single reporter here in Portland had that debunked in about 30 seconds. So yeah, I think there's a difference between saying he was PO'd because he's coming to Portland, or no, I think he was probably just irritated because he got traded. Like, no, the feeling of having to uproot your family and go tell your wife, hey babe, moving to another town again. Like, I'd be mad too. Like, if you told me tomorrow that, hey Burke, hey, we traded you, you're going to Des Moines, iHeart wants you there, I'd probably be irritated. Not because I'm going to Des Moines, but being traded sucks. I think that's what happened, and then people ran with it.
Something to keep an eye on. Yossi Goslin, who is, I guess, an NBA cap expert, with the Houston Rockets, who have been busy today. They got Clint Capella and Dorian Finney-Smith. The Rockets apparently don't have the cap space to sign Capella and Finney-Smith, meaning one of the acquisitions is a sign and trade. So, interesting. But again, that could be back to what you were talking about with Neil Olshey. You know, teams find loopholes and different ways to get things done.
Absolutely, they do.
Even when you don't think they have the money for it. So, what are you hoping for tonight? Like, before we go to bed, Jeremy Grant trade, or you want him to sign a shooter? Get some offense in there.
One or the other. I think it'd be great to go to bed with the news that they signed a free agent, because the thing is, Chad, I think the Jeremy Grant thing is going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
But I think right now, especially for fans, I think they're on kind of pins and needles hoping that, buying out DeAndre Ayton wasn't for nothing, right? They want to see that reap something. And I know Sean brought it up, and we've seen a couple other reports that they might do that, Portland could sit on this and use it at the deadline, because if you, under the new CBA, if you don't, use it in free agency, it does become a trade exception. And I think that would be terrible, because how many times have we seen a trade exception actually used in a trade? Just doesn't happen. You talk about giving up negative value deals. Like, hey, just take this guy, and all we want is, that money that you send us for cap relief. Like, what? Like, you just don't see that happen very often.
All right. We know that Malik Beasley is being investigated by the feds for alleged gambling on NBA games. Apparently, the NBA is investigating Gary Payton II for betting.
What? Wow, this broke my ears up.
Toradol, hell of a drug.
I don't know how Dad would feel about that.
Huh. Interesting.
Very.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for a Grant trade. If we can get a Grant trade tonight and a free agent signing, that would be nice.
It would be nice. It would be nice. But keep in mind, it is just, the first few hours of a free agency here. And, maybe not tonight, but I would love for it to happen. I mean, that July 6th date, right, where all those deals can finally pen, meet paper, and you start to see a lot. That's where we're all focused on.
All right. I think that, and please don't hold me to it, but I think the Gary Payton report might have been an erroneous Twitter report. My bad.
An erroneous report?
Yeah. Can't believe something just because it's on the internet. All right. Nothing new from Shams. All right. We're set here. Yeah, it was a good move. The Blazers, I didn't see that being the solution for DeAndre Ayton, but they found the solution. And it's going to work out. And flexibility. And the full mid-level, I mean, you have access to that type of money where you can pay someone $14.1 per year.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll use the full mid-level or not, but at least it gives them options.
I said I believe in the CBA. It can be split. So it's...
Oh, you can split it up between a couple of players.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be just all lump sum, right? Like there's other things that can't be, but it can be. Basically, it gives you that $14.1 million, and then you can use that how you want.
All right, Chris Burkhardt is here. I am here. Brendan Slaughter is in the house. We'll keep things rolling. Courtside Monday coming up at 6. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. You got anyone join you for Courtside Monday tonight?
Oh, the wonderful Brendan Slaughter, right? No, we're solo shipping this with my co-captain over there because there's plenty to talk about.
How about the Pac-12 announcing the addition of Texas State, and within a year they've been able to piece things back together where they still have a conference with 8 football-playing schools now to keep them at the FBS level.
Good for them, but it's gross.
Gross in what way?
This should have never happened. I hate the current state of college football. Pac-12 should have been the Pac-12. Should have been Oregon and Oregon State and Washington, the Arizona schools. I hate the breakup.
After watching last year, the Big 12 felt like the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the Big 10 felt like. It didn't feel like the Big 10, and the SEC is still the SEC.
Still the SEC. But good for the Pac-12.
I mean, to an extent, even the transfer portal kind of stinks. I mean, like, just every year you're going to have guys that, look to move on. And, like, looking at Oregon State baseball, had a great year, and they had a handful of guys hit the portal or, look at the draft. So it's I'm kind of with Chris. I don't know if I love this new world of college sports we're in.
I just like the fact, though, that they should rebrand as Pac State because Gonzaga is the only one that is not a state school. Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Oregon State, San Diego State, Texas State, Utah State, and Washington State are the conference now.
Let's call up Jamie Hudson and ask if we can make it Gonzaga State.
Gonzaga State. We should work on that.
They should just add a state to the end of it.
Yep.
It's not a bad idea. Oh, my goodness. All right. Still no word on the Trailblazers yet, and we're hoping that a move comes down. But based on everyone that we've talked to today, it would seem that shooting should be a priority. And, I think we knew that when they traded Anthony Simons and brought in Drew Holiday, they've lost a big chunk of their offense. So there's no question they're going to look for shooting. And as you pointed out, too, not just that, but they're going to need some depth up front at the power forward position. Delano Banton's not going to be back. Jabari Walker's not going to be back. So you've got what? Right now you have Grant, you have Denny, and you have Tamani. There's no other power forwards on the roster.
No.
Chris Murray's not a power forward.
No, there's none. There's none. And so you have to get some depth in that situation. Granted, Tumani Kamara can maybe slide and play that position a little bit for you, help you out. And there's some moves there. But, yeah, in the long run, there's not a power forward. So I think that's where you're looking. And, again, shooting. So I do think Luke Kennard, who was obviously people talked about for a while. I think there was a lot of people talking about him at the trade deadline last year just because they liked what he brought to the table. Like, that's a guy that I think would fit in perfectly. Again, a guy who can just come in and shoot, and that's all you need him to do.
All right, the 13 players currently on the Trailblazers roster: Scoot, Shaden, Donovan Clingan, Denny Avdia, Tamani Kamara, Chris Murray, Robert Williams III, Young Hansen, the rookie from China, Drew Holiday, Duop Reef, Matisse Thybulle, Ryan Rupert, and Jeremy Grant. And that is your group after the buyout with DeAndre Ayton. And again, with that, the Blazers are going to pay him $25 million. They save $10 million. That comes off the salary cap number, which brings a lot of flexibility and gives them access to the full mid-level exception. As Chris pointed out, it's worth $14.1 million per year. So they've got options now when it comes to free agents.
Yep, they do. And again, under the rules of the MLE. There with the full, it starts at 14.1. You can have up to a 4-year deal with a maximum of 5% increases per year. So doing that math, the largest contract you could sign would be a 4-year, $60.7 million deal.
What are you and the family going to do for the 4th of July?
Oh, we're heading up to the lake house. We're heading up to the lake house Thursday. Going to have some fun, watch some fireworks.
Whereabouts is the lake house at?
Do lots of swimming. That is classified information. I don't need the millions and millions of Rip City Radio fans following me, but it's Pine Hollow out there south of the Dalles in the Ty Valley area.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Beautiful. Got a nice little cabin right on the water that my grandpa built with his own 2 hands.
Oh, there you go.
It's beautiful.
I haven't been out in that area in a long time.
It's nice.
Beautiful.
I grew up over there, so it's great.
So do they have a local fireworks show, or you guys going to set off your own?
Well, all the drunkards from the campground hit the boat ramp, and it's a free for all, and it's beautiful. Fire marshal comes out just to make sure nothing goes too crazy, and you have some fun. They did do it one year. They had a professional. I don't know where they got the money. It might have just been someone rich, just fronted it, but they did a professional show, and they just brought out a barge and sat it on the middle of the lake, and it was just, oh gosh, it was beautiful.
I love that. The two most active teams today with the start of free agency, the Denver Nuggets traded Michael Porter Jr. to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for Cam Johnson. They also went out and got Bruce Brown back on a one-year deal.
That's big.
And then the Houston Rockets able to go out and get Dorian Finney-Smith, 4 years, $53 million. And then they went out and added Clint Capella. So I would say those two teams, Denver and Houston, probably the most impressive early on in the free agency period.
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree.
All right, big thanks to Brendan Slaughter, to all of you for taking time to join us today. I appreciate it. Chris Burkhardt has got Courtside Monday coming up next, and I'll be back with you tomorrow at 3 o'clock for the Rip City Drive. Have a good night.